Part 3. Suggestive Thoughts on the Attainment of Spirituality. As I have previously said, I have no system of philosophy to present, and possibly nothing which ought to be dignified by the name of philosophy at all. I have not, however, been able to divorce my psychical research from my religious feeling, nor do I see how any religion can be worthy of the name which does not enter as a continual inspiration into the daily life. Among the many definitions of religion which I have seen, I like that best which makes it mean the right relation of mind and heart toward our fellow creatures and our environment, and the right attitude of the soul toward the incomprehensible and the unknown. It need have no specific name, nor is it of great importance that one be identified with some particular religious sect, but it does devolve upon each individual person to ascertain to the best of his ability what attitudes and relations are right, and to constantly enlighten his understanding on these matters as he progresses along the pathway between birth and the grave. We love the man who walks in our midst with his head among the stars, but we smile a little at his lack of mental balance if he does not make sure that his feet are treading solid ground. I believe we may walk on solid ground and at the same time lift the eye to the most distant star, whenever we may wish. I have ventured to offer a few ideas upon the varied relationships in life. If they shall be found to be old, that will matter little, since everyone is privileged to appropriate from out the treasure house of the past, to recast old ideas into new molds of his own thinking, and to nourish himself thereby. It may be that many of my readers will choose to pass by these pages altogether, yet deep down in my heart, I am assured that among those who peruse them, there will be found at least a few other hearts, in which they will awaken an answering thought and a responsive feeling. Self-discipline. The best is near, already ours, if we would wisely use the powers of mind and heart, and do our part. Complete and fair the earth will be, for him whose inner majesty crowns every sight with its own light. In any place we find the thing, that in our hearts the power we bring. To see and use all else we lose. Victory Southworth. To easily ignore one's own personality is an attainment that must be striven for, a power that must be gained, but it is after all a mere preparation for that which follows, a mere opening at the door to the vastness which is outside of personality. Death of the lower means the birth of the higher. The suppression of a vice means the nourishment of a virtue. The dying of the selfish means the living of the charitable. The extinction of the ignoble means the blossoming of nobility. Soul culture certainly does not come from the reading of many books or from the forming of a large acquaintance, nor is it measured thereby. Yet it may depend somewhat upon the nourishment one is able to extract from his reading and upon the society of those of his acquaintance who themselves are cultured. One who is extremely sensitive and at the same time self-repressed, the first condition generally being the cause of the second, is the possessor of a temperament sufficiently at war with itself to cause any amount of mental anguish. Until the temperament is understood, and the unhappiness resulting from it is outgrown. Yet this same sensitiveness, when once understood, when it serves and does not master, brings to its possessor the perception and enjoyment of untold things, which the person lacking it or possessing it in small degree cannot appreciate at all. Slowly in early life we begin to apprehend the great truth, that as surely as the cause of our unhappiness lies within ourselves, just so surely do we possess the power within ourselves to remedy ills, to dispossess ourselves of misery, and to take possession of bliss. I understand the philosophy of Spinoza to make a distinction between necessity and external compulsion. We are of necessity, in the nature of things, bound to do certain actions, to follow certain lines of conduct. That is, we need not, unless we choose, but we must in order to attain our highest good. That is all. The giving up of the selfish quest for happiness so dignifies and ennobles the soul that one ceases to grope with downcast eyes. One looks up, takes the hand of God, and walks with him as a companion, a friend. Then there is work and plenty to do, for one is a co-worker with God. Just as a grown-up daughter takes the arm of her earthly father and walks joyously, confidingly, companionably, sharing his schemes and his outlook, yet recognizing all the while the superior age, the superior knowledge, the superior power. The person who is delicately sensitive to spiritual influences receives impressions in many ways, and is more or less swayed by them, and it is particularly desirable, indeed imperative, that such person should cultivate strength and self-control. My own nature is my law. That law in its purest meaning must be obeyed. Let us never forget, in the analysis of self, that the great desideratum is the power to turn one's face immediately and wholly in the opposite direction from that of our sensations, our emotions, our personal desires. To be and to do as if they were not, to fling from us the encumbrance of self-analysis itself, and to stand, erect, as free, pure spirit. When one accepts the theory that the haps and the mishaps in his particular environment take place for the purpose of developing character in him, to understand their significance and their special bearing upon the end in view becomes a fascinating intellectual game. To control one's nerves, or be ruled by them, that is the question. The one thing leads to life, the other to death. Self-stayed, serene and high, the poet says. It seems to be an inversion of the natural order of things that mere nerves should have possession of the field, frightening all else. Yet the nerves are like the finest magnetic needle, indicating the slightest change in the atmosphere, the least deviation in our course. They should be of the greatest aid to the spirit, like the dainty, delicate servitors that they are. Self-poise is a marvelous thing. Its influence ramifies through every part of mind and body, affecting each tiny cell. A new cleavage has, as it were, been made, and all primal elements in the nature strike a new attitude toward the center of control. Checking the vagaries of thought, relaxing the tensions of the body, breathing deeply of God's pure air, ignoring the importance of the ego, steadily pushing the activity of the whole being in the direction in which one wishes it to move, are rules which, when followed closely and when working harmoniously, are sufficient to introduce one into a new world. A world so large as compared with the treadmill narrowness of a small life and purposeless thinking that it may well be called a universe. This glorified world awaits him who seeks. Despondency is an insult to the Creator. It cripples all the faculties he has given. It should be rooted out of one's nature, as any other vice. It should be sublimated into cheer. The soul will plod on in certain directions blindly if it must, but when the lamp of intelligence is lighted, it walks boldly without wavering or fall. We hear about the art of forgetting. It is more than an art. It is a positive essential in one's mental equipment if one would make progress in the spiritual life. The art of forgetting one thing is the art of remembering another. The thing which we wish to forget must be supplanted in our minds by the definite thing upon which we wish to concentrate the attention. Thus it happens that the mastery of physical weaknesses and temperamental defects and the gain in mental power are, after all, brought about by cultivation of spiritual qualities. It is only as spiritual qualities, positive and strong, supplant the things in ourselves which we wish to forget that the desideratum is attained, namely, the control of all our forces and the enjoyment of our lives. The secret of working easily, without tiring, is an intelligent understanding and adjustment of the mutual relation of spirit, mind, nerve, and muscle. These are all separate and distinct things, and yet they are one. The body should be in such a position that the life fluids may flow through it without obstruction. No muscles should be taught except those required for the particular work that is being performed. The nerves should be steady, not jumping erratically because of agitation in the mind. The mental powers must be concentrated upon the work in hand, and the soul must be without rebellion. One may travel the world over in search of peace and never know it until he makes it. Let him make use of the mighty scepter, which God has given him, and command the elements at war within his own breast. The downpour of water from the skies is essential to the life of the trees. The rain of sorrow in our lives must be drawn into our lifeblood, else we too shall wither and perish, and fail of the growth we were born to accomplish. Living according to the laws of nature, we expand day by day as inevitably and unconsciously as do the trees. That in your temperament, which you recognize as your greatest weakness, may become not only your greatest strength, but the source of your greatest enjoyment, since by means of mastering a weakness, you learn the law which brings to you its opposite good. Real goodness is not so common a thing in this world. It may even be said to be rare. It is not a subterfuge into which one flees because he lacks ability or will. Rather is it ability and will only which can acquire the actual good. Law prevails in the so-called lower as well as the higher. It is for us to choose whether we will live under the preponderating influence of laws which bring about a lesser degree of happiness, or under laws which mold us into creatures of a finer fiber, capable of seeing in our environment that to which we were formerly blind, capable of enjoying that which formerly conveyed no meaning to us. The unspeakable relief which comes to a person who struggles with an unhappy temperament when one day he suddenly turns his back upon it all, is only to be understood by those who suffer the miseries of such an existence and into whose hearts at last the floods of spiritual light are poured. The instant the spirit is thus freed, lightheartedness springs into being at a bound involuntarily, necessarily, for it is the struggle itself which makes the heavy heart. The joy which is the accompaniment of vigorous, energetic action then supplants the heaviness of lackadaisical, paralyzing struggle. The divine will reveals to its devoted followers more and more of its purport and wisdom. Follow not the will, and you may become blind. No one should feel that because he is locked in his own chamber for the hour, he may give free play to unworthy thought and ignoble feeling. He may safely indulge in melancholy or despair. This does not mean that he may not occasionally be off guard, as it were. If it did, privacy would contribute little toward the recuperation of our powers. But when alone, one may entertain the angel of his better self, even more charmingly perhaps, than when in the presence of others. Life may be glorious every day. The spirit may wrap itself round in cloud-like airiness, so light, so beautiful, so penetrating, that all which is ugly is softened by it and disappears from our view. The healthful discipline that comes from daily work, when one takes pleasure in it, is valuable beyond computation. The power to direct the mental faculties undisturbed by the turmoil of surroundings is of the greatest imaginable good, and this power acquired in daily discipline will be of service wherever one goes. The contact with our kind in general, high and low, superiors and inferiors, refined and coarse, brings to the surface the shining beauty of true character, as stones rubbed together only polish and make brighter the beauty of the priceless gem. Why then need the worker complain of his lot? Rather, let him glory in it. Daily work is many a soul's salvation. Daily work may grow for us wings instead of forging for us fetters. Abatement of thought expresses tersely a mental process which should be within the power of all. Rather, it expresses an action of the spirit upon the mind, causing it to refrain from working at will. No one who has not acquired the ability to abate the thought to a greater or lesser degree knows the highest spiritual peace which he is capable of attaining. It may be that the thought can never wholly cease while life lasts, as the body may not stop its breathing. But surely it is that when riotous thought abates, peace and joy roll over the kingdom. I remember the beautiful words of P. Ramanathan. I do not know whether he himself was quoting, that thoughts are the warp and woof of the veil which hides from us the face of God. Lift the veil and God is there. Happiness. Knewst thou the truth? Thou wouldst not pray, Lord, to thy child, send joy this day. Thou art deceived, joy is within, and never pain nor grief nor sin can take away. God put it there, nor comes it nearer thee for prayer. Joy is of thy true self apart, why shouldst thou pray for what thou art? Mary Putnam Gilmore. The full throat of the world is charged with song. Morning and twilight melt with ecstasy. In the high heat of noon. Simply to be. Palpitant where the green spring forces throng. Eager for life, life unashamed and strong. This is desire fulfilled. Exalted, free. The spirit gains her ether, scornfully. Denies existence that is dark or wrong. This is enough to see the song begun, which shall be finished in some field afar. Laugh that the night may still contain a star. Nor idly moan your impotence of grace. Life is a song, lift up your carefree face. Gladly and gratefully toward the sun. Helen Hay Whitney. Happiness. Let us learn to dwell in the upper chambers of our being. There the mental atmosphere is always clear. The moral horizon is unflecked by clouds, only enchanting distance and mysterious space meet the gaze of the ego through the windows of the purified soul. To be keenly sensitive to the ugly and the bad is to be delicately sensitive to the beautiful and the good. To be sufferingly sensitive to human inharmonies is to be joyfully alive to enlightened lawfulness. So closely akin are joy and sorrow that while one hand may be pressing a heavy heart, the other may be stretching upward toward the stars. When one comes into virtual possession of the wealth of the universe, through conscious affinity with it, poverty in material things is no longer to be feared. Who can rob us of the soil over which we lightly tread? Who can deprive us of the air we freely and deeply breathe? Who can bar from our vision the beauty of sky and star? Who can alter by one slightest shade the glorious coloring of the landscape or the gorgeousness of the setting sun? We wish for freedom to live, to act, within the perfect laws of God, yet independent of the laws of man, which must be ever-changing, never perfect. This does not mean lawlessness, but lawfulness. Man's laws are only an approach to those of nature, an imperfect copy of them. He who sees nature's law, back of man-made law, will not disobey the latter, and it will be no bondage to him. His own natural law is the higher. One touch of real sorrow is worth 1,000 days of that which is ordinarily considered happiness unalloyed. And what is sorrow but contact with the realities of life, with the seriousness of death, with the wonders of God's ways? Why should we then wish that sorrow never enter our path? Sorrow? It is not sorrow. That is only our name for it. It is the opening of the clouds before us, giving us a glimpse of the vastness of heaven. It is God's hand appearing out of the haze, pointing to a glory never yet conceived in our days of simple, complacent happiness. In the course of time, all nature assumes for us a character of intelligence, of life, and her laws become friendly creatures. We may commune with them, yield to them, trust them, feel ourselves shielded and protected by them. Even the darkness of the night is friendly. It hushes us to repose, it soothes us to sleep. Why need one be restlessly wakeful when thus closely befriended? The space and the silence are full of stirring creatures, our many friends. Illumination from within transfigures all upon which it falls. Thus again may we make a new world about us. It is the nature of light to transfigure, and the object seen takes on a special hue from the character of the light which shines upon it. Fate is my mission, my loved work, the particular work which I can do better than I can do other things, the work which I can do better than someone else can do it. Fate is a mighty friend in disguise. Let no one say that he cannot live a successful, happy life in the spot where his birth places him or in places where the trend of events takes him. The inner life, the life of strength, nobility, patience, effort, dignity, beauty, depends not upon its location in the material world, depends not on outer surroundings, but rather, by its own inherent force, does it draw unto itself from earth and heaven the strong vital currents, which mingling make for that life a new atmosphere, make for that life almost a new environment? So translucent in time may that atmosphere become, that the soul, without moving the body from one spot, may have a vision far exceeding in acuteness and range, the vision of the insatiate traveler, though his travels be worldwide. Pride of attainment in spiritual things is inconsistent with that attainment. Rather, should we be grateful that we have been brought under the law? Why not repose in the protecting goodness of the powers that be? Surely it cannot be that the maker of majestic orbs traveling nightly their course across the heavens, suggesting to us unerring law and flashing down upon us their starry brilliancy, will leave his human children uncared for and adrift. A blow like death knocks us out of our petty selves. The mercurial temperament suffers more than the phlegmatic. It must be remembered, however, that the mercurial temperament senses various degrees of heat and cold in its atmospheric environment, and when Mercury cultivates his intellect, he is able to pick and choose the climate in which he shall daily dwell. It is a blessed thing to give of our substance and feel it no denial, not because we have much, but because we wish to give that which we have. Life is serious, or should be. Yet it is the man who is apparently the most serious who most easily bursts into the happy laughter of the light of heart. The deeply serious man looks into the principles of being, into the laws of life, understands the secrets of the Most High. He is the man then who may at times be lifted into the bright airiness of God's fairylands. We find ourselves at times in states of mind which seem to be those of transition. We do not quite understand what is taking place within. Things that once would have given us pleasure have lost their attraction. Occurrences which once would have caused in us excessive emotion no longer have that power. Affection itself seems to wane and dependence on our friends is less binding. We are a little fearful lest in some way past our comprehension and beyond our control, our hold on life is weakening and our interest flagging. Yet we need not be anxious. Transition states such as these are glorious harbingers of better things to come. Irksome bondage of the flesh is dropping off and freedom is being acquired. Let us welcome always the advance. Be watchful, trustful, and calm. The resistless laws of nature are sweeping us on. Death saddens? It must be sweet to lay down the burdens of life and fall asleep in the arms of God, just as we lay down the burdens of a day and fall asleep in the arms of night. And as God speaks to us in the darkness of the night, bidding us lay down the burdens of the day, so He calls us, by the cloudiness of death, to lay down the burdens of life. Let us reverence and welcome both the darkness of night and the cloudiness of death, for God is in both. One is always happy in conscious power when exerted for good. Spirit unhampered is strong. Therefore, by as much as we free the spirit, give play and exercise to its attributes, by so much do we become consciously powerful, by so much do we grow like unto the gods. Let us cling to a friendship which shows itself persisting through differences of opinion, divergence of interests, and separation of lives. Such a friendship proves that the heart is stronger than the head, and that the heart's needs are all important. If one listen with concentrated spirit attention, just as he would listen with the physical ear were he trying to catch a sound, he will hear many beautiful things which pass unheeded by the busybody and the listless. Renewed consecration to holiness of life and nobility of conduct will always and immediately lift one from the slough of despond. Wherein is depth different from height? Well may he, who can look into the depths of the commonplace, and wrest from it its meaning, be envied by his fellow man, and not despised by him who is on the mountain-top. Delicate courtesy compels us, and the commonest relations in life never cease to be objects of beauty when we see them as the marvels that they are. The term that we glibly use, face of nature, is itself suggestive of life. For in a human face, there is the expression of all the qualities that make up the soul. Let us call it then, face of nature or face of God. If we are akin with it, it will be very much alive. Then we shall see in the changing clouds, the waving trees, the widest waters, only the expression of the unseen life aback, responsive to each sentiment of our own, answering each appeal. We do not need the language of words when love shines upon us from a beaming countenance. Then why are we so deaf to this most eloquent message that comes to us from the face of nature, revealing the almighty soul behind? Inexpressible is the joy of having found a confidence that replaces fear, a trust that takes the place of doubt, a composure wrought out of agitation, light that banishes darkness, and a freedom that breaks down all prison walls.